Welcome, welcome. We have a really great topic today. What we're going to be focusing on is scaling up without breaking down, work strategies for accounting firm growth. And I'm going to be talking with David Christillo. I'm Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solution. And what we're going to cover is how to avoid workflow bottlenecks as your firm grows, to harness the power of AI in order to supercharge your workflows, and also how this helps to improve your firm's bottom line. I definitely suggest you have something ready to take notes, paper, pencil, get up a new sheet on your computer because David is going to generously share a lot. And then we're going to also be able to let you know how to connect with him as we wrap up. A little bit about David Christillo. He's the founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow, which is an Inc. 5000 software company, and it's helped over 1,000 accounting firms. Basically, they make sure your client work does not fall through the cracks. There's no loose ends, there's no black holes that things get lost in. And in addition to that, he also is a great supporter of the accounting community. He has a podcast called Growing Your Firm, which spotlights best practices in the accounting industry and nearing 1 million downloads. And in addition to that, he's the co-author of Double Your Accounting Firm. So if you want to find out more about David Christillo and Jetpack Workflow, you can go to jetpackworkflow.com. Anyway, let's go ahead and just dive in. David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Love the community you're building and excited to dive in.
Thank you. So before we get into that, how did you get into this direction of really creating workflows that help firm owners?
Yeah, maybe it's a bit of an atypical story, but I'm really keen on this idea for anyone in business. And I was a aspiring business owner, aspiring entrepreneur, but I really didn't know exactly what to build. I kind of tinkered with some various businesses and projects, and I came across this concept, and it's certainly applicable technology where go out and find a painful problem and go build a solution for those painful problems. And so I thought, well, I can't, I have problems, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if they're universal. Instead of being so inward focused, why don't I become outward focused? Why don't I look for an industry that I feel is important yet neglected? And to me, that was accounting. And there were accountants everywhere, and there were accounting firms everywhere. I drive around and I would see them, and I started reaching out to them, emailing them, calling them, learning about what it's like to build, run, or scale an accounting firm. And I saw a lot of issues around process management, checklist management, project management. And it sounds very simple on the surface, but there's a lot of complexity in firms that have so many tasks, so many due dates, so many team members, and maybe even at 5 or 6 team members, you're talking about thousands and thousands of deadlines every year. And there wasn't really a great modern solution for them. And so from those dozens of conversations, we started building out Jetpack Workflow.
And there's some people that think that they can do it themselves. And because they don't maybe have the inside knowledge, there's some common mistakes that firm owners make when designing workflows. What are some of the things that you've seen that are those common mistakes?
Yeah, well, and I'll preface this with, we're all learning and it's all very iterative. So, if you're reflecting on your processes, if you're reflecting on how your services get completed, if you're pulling in team members and asking them for feedback, you're ahead of the game, right? You're ahead of the game and keep going. And when we work with firms that have that mentality, I just know they're going to win. And I've seen it time and time again. We've been in this industry for nearly a decade. When I see that type of mentality, which is like, we may not be good today, but we're going to be better tomorrow, they will undoubtedly win in the market. I just keep seeing it. I wish I could invest in all of them, frankly, because it's just, we start seeing these patterns. But, I will say 2 things immediately come to mind. One, in the fervor to get work done, right? We all feel really good when we're kind of in the trenches doing work. You get in the flow, you're helping clients, that you start before things are ready, right? We want to hire action takers. We are typically action takers ourselves. That's why we started a firm, or we became the partner or the leader. But if you start working on a client file before everything's in, before all the necessary materials are ready to go, you have this terrible problem of stopping and then restarting. And it sounds very innocent, but it happens, 1,000 paper cuts at a time. and it starts to bleed away not only at your profits and your time management, but your sanity. All of a sudden, you're like, with the team I have and the work I have, we should be able to get it all done. But it's typically a compounding effect of cuts that really stop firms from being successful with their current capacity. So my big principle is start when ready. Be ruthless about what is required from the client. Don't be ruthless to the client. Just be ruthless about what you need and communicate it clearly to the client. We can't start until we have these 5 materials. You submit it, I'll review it. If something's missing, we got to send it back. We want to make sure we're delivering you the right service at the right time. So we need all these materials. You can be human about it. You could be nice about it, but you have to be clear about it. It has to be those 5 materials. And I remember working with the firm that they implemented a few small changes, but they implemented that change right at the beginning. It was towards the end of the year. And so right at the beginning of tax season, it was a team of 3. The third person said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do another tax season. Went down to 2, and they attributed to that one change, only starting when ready, and being able to handle the same amount of tax returns without an increase of time in their weekly schedules that year, because it was that pervasive in their firm. And it sounds very innocent. So that is a really, really big one I like to key in on.
And when you were talking about this, I was thinking of month-end close for bookkeeping as well as tax season as well, all the starts and stops that happen and how inefficient they are. So when you're looking at only starting with when ready, would you suggest then that maybe somebody is the gatekeeper or that there's a checklist? How would they know when everybody's, when all the docs are in?
Yeah, there needs to be somebody that runs quality assurance or reviews that checklist. There needs to be a checklist of items. It could be sourced in Jetpack, it could be sourced anywhere, but have it somewhere referenceable that everybody knows where it lives, and communicate this to the client. Sometimes the client is also in the dark about what can be submitted. Well, is it these 3 things, these 5 things? Just no, it could be, a simple message. It's just these 5 things. We just want to, level set expectations for this period, this quarter, this month, whatever it is. But yes, there is a guard that if the client is required to submit 5 things and they submit 4, there's somebody that says, oh, nope, it's not going to the next stage. I'm going to kick it back to the client. Depending on the firm size, that could be an admin, that could be, a different partner. It could be a manager. I don't know. I mean, ideally, it would be an admin. It'd be somebody responsible for intake, but that's depending on the firm size. But you need somebody that can do that. And ideally, again, it's not the person that's doing the processing, because then they're just itching to get started. So it's nice to have a little handoff here.
Okay, so they need a gatekeeper that is going to be protecting the preparer, and nothing gets put on the calendar until all the docs are in.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You can, you could stay in close communication. Hey, this person submitted 80%. We're looking for 1 file, so this is probably going to start next week. I've seen teams run daily huddles to give those kind of updates. I've seen a lot of teams run Monday morning kickoffs to kind of say, hey, we finally got all the materials in, so that's slotted in for this week. So there needs to be, not only this checklist, but a good tight communication between intake and processing, just so they know what's coming down the pipeline.
Okay, so let's talk about as a firm grows, because basically what I see is a lot of firms, they set up their systems for the where they are now, but then as their firm continues to grow, especially if they double or triple their team, breakdowns start to happen because it can't accommodate the growth. So how does the growth impact workflow?
Yeah, it's they're called growing pains for a reason, right?
Yeah.
That's what I always say. I mean, we love the word growing, we don't like the word pain, but I've never seen it. Maybe it's out there somewhere where somebody's just like growing pleasure. I don't, like growing success, growing fun. Part of it is fun, but it's growing pains for a reason. And so typically what happens, there's a breakdown in handoffs. There's a breakdown in communications. What used to be 2 people is now 3, right? It feels like an incremental person was added to the process, but it drives communication challenges exponentially. And if you don't have well-defined processes between intake and processing, like we just talked about, if this person is in close communication with the other person, and that might be, 2 different staff members, maybe you, the firm owner, leader, partner, are part of that. But if you don't have a tight way to handle, the daily stand-up or the communication handoff, I guarantee you everything's going to be magnified. All the inefficiencies, everything that was not in place will be magnified. And it's not like you need to be perfect from day one, but you have to realize that as you add more people, there needs to be more communication. This is, this is the dreaded overhead that we sometimes hear
Mhm.
about. You just need to be thoughtful in the communication between different team members. So you have intake, you have processing, you might have review, and then you might have delivery. Now we're talking about potentially three people. You have intake and delivery being the same person, processing and review might be two different people. And so all that needs to be coordinated, all that needs to be communicated. And, sometimes it does feel like you're herding cats. And part of it is the process,
Mhm.
and the communication strategy you have, and part of it is the people you hire, which is the second challenge. You might have your perfect pod. It's you plus a handful of other people, and you either have this intuitive sense of what everybody's doing, or there's a high level of communication going on there. I've seen firms that sometimes they're like, first four people are all related to them. So you have that advantage. But then as you grow, it's rare, but it
Mhm.
happens. But then as you grow, um, you have adoption challenges, you have change management challenges. So let's say you have your perfect process, and then you bring your team together as you've doubled your firm over the last 1, 2, or 3 years. You update the process, but if you have a handful of additional team members, you probably under underestimate the challenge of getting them to adopt a tool, to follow the process, to check in with them, to hold them accountable. That is extremely challenging. And I know that's outside a little bit of workflow, but
Mhm.
we're a big fan of the phrase, if it's not in Jetpack, it doesn't exist. And we say that with our sales team. If it's not in the sales tool, it doesn't exist. And so, where you might get some of this naturally happening in the early stages with your firm and your team, you're all in the trenches. As you build out your team, you have to be more methodical about and reinforcing this is the tool and this is the way and these are the handoffs and this is how we communicate. And I'm not advocating to be a micromanager, but these things do need to be defined um, organizationally, because they're going to be defined one way or another. They're either going to be
Mhm.
defined organizationally, or everybody's going to have their own little way of doing things, which is going to drive you crazy.
And my feeling is that success is messy.
Yes,
So
yes.
you can plan, and most likely those best laid plans will eventually fall apart somewhere. I think that what you mentioned as far as communication being really important is something that might be easily overlooked, because not everybody's going to be a great communicator. So that's one thing. And then the other thing with the team members is, so often I've seen where somebody invests in what they think is going to be the next greatest thing for their firm. And because they don't train the team members correctly, or there's resistance to change within, it just becomes an expensive thing that gets pushed aside once again. It never, ever works in the way that it's supposed to. So I love the fact that you're really supporting the concept of continue to check in, make sure that people are well trained, and to do some supervision along the way. I
Yeah.
think that that will help to uh, make those growing pains a little bit easier. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, you mentioned something that I just wanted to zoom in on, which I think one of the challenges with adopting a workflow system, but you can almost rinse repeat this with anything. It could be a new pricing strategy, a new marketing strategy. It could be any piece of technology, is a false attribution of failure. Meaning, well, we bought this
Mhm.
tool and, and there's a lot of, I guess, for lack of a better word, embarrassment that if you buy something, you champion it in the firm, and the firm doesn't adopt it and you sell it, this is now like, an X on your record. Even if you're
Mhm.
an owner, you keep this X, you keep a scorecard of yourself or something like that, and you're like, well, I should. The problem was X, and it could be the false attribution. Now, maybe it was the tool. The tool was not a good fit. You were oversold on the tool. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it wasn't the tool. Maybe it was the team. Maybe it was your timeline. Typically
Mhm.
it takes X weeks. You wanted it in Y days, right? And so I think it's not exactly where we're going, but I think as you go into the world of optimizing for growth and kind of navigating through this, just take some time to reflect that you are attributing, or you're trying to do the root cause of failure appropriately versus, what you feel is the case at the time. And I think that's really, really hard to do.
Mhm. That goes into what I see as the athlete's mindset, is that even if they don't have the numbers that they were aiming for, there's so many things that they did right along the way and they need to figure out what is that one thing where the bottleneck was, where they couldn't, where there's room for improvement, and really focus on that in order to maybe get a better outcome next time. So I love this
Yep.
concept of false attribution of failure. And instead of just putting something away and saying it didn't work, really do like a 360 review to figure out maybe where the hiccup was in order to be able to make some adjustments so you can get a better result.
Yeah. I
And
mean, literally, if you're writing these things down, I find that writing is a good mirror. So if you are experiencing a lot of frustration or pain around something, right? You didn't get this billing strategy, right? You have clients that are
mhm,
upset, right? It's probably not because you shouldn't go to fixed fee. It might be because of the actual price point, how you wrote it out, the value you're delivering to clients. You know, the listener, the viewer knows the right answer, but you need to sit with it. And I find writing it down and running through your logic and letting it marinate for 1 to 3
mhm,
days, it will start to surface better thinking of what you need to do to adjust or tweak. It's the equivalent. Like, you mentioned an athlete. Athletes have the benefit of like, they're filmed all the time. They're like, wow, I was trying to hit, a home
mhm,
run. I didn't hit a home run. Let's go to the tapes. Let's look at, how I'm twisting or turning. Let's look at my jump shot. Let's look at my whatever it is. Well, we don't have game tapes. So the closest we have to game tapes typically is writing it down and reflecting and trying to sit with it. So I think it's really important. I love the example of the athlete.
mhm. And I want to shift to what I see as a hot topic, which is AI. What do you see as far as the impact of AI on accounting workflows?
Yeah, well, I think the whole industry is going away, Lauren. No, I'm just kidding. The this is
Never.
I could tell you, when we first launched the absolute first, we call it minimal viable product, the MVP of Jetpack Workflow. This was 2014. And people were like, "Are you nuts? Accounting's going away. Don't you know there's machine learning and there's these algorithms and everything's gonna like accounting's gonna go away. They're always on the top list. Accountants are gonna go away.
Mhm,
Um, we're still here and we're still needed more than ever. We went through COVID. I mean, my goodness, we're needed more than ever. So
mhm,
is there a place for technology? Is it going to impact the profession? I think the case is clear. It's yes. It will have an absolute impact. I think it will make us more efficient. I think, and rightly or wrongly, we'll see where this comparison goes. But like the spreadsheet had a pretty big impact on the, profession. And it was very positive, right? And it took somebody who, you know, was not using a spreadsheet and made them look wildly inefficient to people who knew how to use a spreadsheet, right? And I think in a large quantity of cases, over the next X years, right? I'm not gonna throw out a number because nobody knows. Let's be honest, nobody
mhm,
knows. It is going fast, but nobody knows. It's going to be a massive amplifier of efficiency and productivity when it catches up to a lot of the accounting functions. I don't see a world where we're going to have deep fake accountants or AI accountants that talk to clients, unless they're AI clients, then are then running, deep, digital businesses on their own.
mhm,
I think AI could hire AI to do their own accounting, but until that happens, I think like there is going to be a very important review, quality assurance, human element to being an accountant. And I think in the short term, it's a lot of the folks that were able to utilize spreadsheets early on look like superheroes in terms of productivity. I think as AI advances in terms of what they call agents, so um, um, software that can actually achieve some of the actions and then report back to the person, I think that's probably going to happen in the short term. There's a lot of admin tasks that could fall under that umbrella, from the client chase to getting two different tools to check one another, to chasing down signatures, to trying to do a preliminary quality assurance scan on client intake, right? We said, hey, if you need 5 things from the client, right? If it's 4, does a person really need to see that it's 4 out of 5? No. Like I think an agent can review it. But I also think even when you do get 5 items submitted, there's probably a case where in the future an AI agent can screen all the documentation and determine if it's actually filled out correctly or not, but then surface what it feels is correct or incorrect about the documentation for the person to review. So that intake specialist could probably amplify the number of clients that they're seeing at any one
mhm.
point, which frankly, I think given our talent shortages, can't come soon enough. Like we actually need these efficiencies more than ever, and especially as the growing complexity of business and tax law happens, like we need this to be here as soon as possible.
And I agree that AI continues to improve efficiency, increase accuracy. Things that are done manually can now be done automated in a fraction of the time. But the other part of it is it's not going to replace the human side, at least not anytime in the near future. And also, so many firm owners are client-centered, and there's a relationship component that's a softer benefit, and it's not going to replace that anytime in the near future either. So yes, efficiency as far as the flows go and the work being done, some of it, but the personal side of it, I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Yeah, the way I look at it is tinker with it, explore it, find
Hmm.
use cases in your firm. Ask around, go to trade shows, listen to things like this, see where you could pick up use cases. And then as it pertains to doomsday, just totally ignore it until it's obviously a doomsday, right? Like, I mean, until
Hmm.
like, so for example, there was this kind of you see these headlines, but then it kind of goes away. In the world of software development, you saw this headline. There was this release called Devin. Devin was supposed to be an entry-level programmer. It shook the world of software engineering for about 36 hours, and now no one's talking about it a couple weeks later because there are some things that it evolved and it
Hmm.
looked great, but is a replacement? No, not yet. And there's some things that it still needs to really drive, and it will still need programmers to oversee it and work with it and pair with it. And so I think until the evidence is there that it is literally replacing people, then just figure out how to go all in on using it. And even then, you still want to go all in on using it. I mean, I think it's like, technology typically favors the people that learn how to use it and adopt it. And
Hmm.
so I would just completely ignore the doomsday because I don't see any utility over spiraling into, capitalism is over. We're all going to be run by machines. We need a new government. We need a new currency. Okay, let's put that aside. You can read
Yep.
about it. That's fine if you like to, do that in your spare time, but don't treat it as something that's utilitarian for your business today.
And as we're talking about this with AI technology, I'm thinking about my passion topic is about pricing for your services. And when firm owners connect an hourly fee or price for their time, then there's no incentive to bring in the technology or improve efficiency because they're going to be charged lower rates. So streamlining is going to be happening. It already is. Things that are done manually are now able to be done with technology and automation. So from your perspective, David, what do you see as maybe a simple tweak that firm owners could benefit from that would improve productivity and really incentivize them to start separating their fees from time and get paid for the value that they offer?
Yeah, well, the two avenues. I'll take it down a
Yeah,
workflow one, and
yeah.
there's a maybe a mindset one. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. I think from a mindset perspective, I think when people try to separate or have a departure from hourly billing to fixed fee, which is a side note, we're so worried about AI sometimes that, so much of the market is still doing hourly billing. Some of these things that feel
Hmm.
antiquated for decades still have a
Hmm.
foothold in the industry. So I mean, change happens both a lot faster and a lot slower than we think. But the folks that are resistant to moving from hourly to fixed, I think it's typically because they kind of go in this spiral loop where they think like, oh, my clients are going to leave me if I force them to kind of flip over to this fixed fee, and that's not what they're used to. And what we've seen a lot in our podcast is people just do it for net new clients. There's
Hmm.
net new clients. And I think that's also the opportunity with workflow tweaks. You don't have to do, it's not a 0 to 1 game. You can look at your existing clients and take a slice by industry, by seniority, by if they know, like, and trust, if they know you, if you have a personal relationship with them. Um, you get to determine the velocity of these changes and how global or local they are to your client base. And so, something that I've seen that's had a really positive effect, and it is part of workflow, though it's not typically, thought of as workflow, was asking clients how they want to receive communications. Now, I'll preface that because everyone's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, I am not insert whatever channel TikToking my clients." Um, you can list out the channels. You could say, "Look, we email, we call, we text. If you don't want to text, don't include it. Or we email, we call, or we can set you up on Teams." I don't know. You can pick what you want. Ask them, and then when they respond, communicate the expectations of that communication channel. Meaning, you know, uh, we're happy to communicate with you first by sending an email. We do expect a response within whatever you feel is
Hmm.
reasonable. One business day, 3 business days, 2 business days, whatever, right? You will have to communicate again that expectation, but at least you have set the standard, and again, happy to text you. All we ask is, 1 business day, 24 hours response. If we text you, just confirming you got the information from us, just confirming you got the question, whatever it may be. And in turn, we promise to do the same, right? By doing this, now you can explain the why. By doing this, we can ensure that you have accurate, timely, high quality books done on time every time, or taxes, or benchmarking reports, or your cash flow reports, or your CFO report, whatever it may be. Tie it to the why you're doing this. But then what happens is you're going through your service, you hit a bottleneck. That bottleneck is commonly called the client. The client has a question. The client has an issue. The client didn't submit something. You thought you got everything, but then all of a sudden they told you, I don't know. Oh yeah, oh by the way, I'm now a partner in this other LLC or whatever. Oh, we have 2 bank accounts now.
Hmm.
Right? And they need to send bank statements from both. Okay, whatever. Um, have on file how your client wants to be communicated with. So if you hit that issue, or when you hit that issue, because everybody hits that issue, is this a text? Is this a call? Is this an email? And that can just be referenced in your client file, in your workflow, right? And I'm not saying this is a magic bullet, right? But it gets you there because you set the expectation, and then you're at least aligning with how they want to be communicated with. And I tell you, if your client wants a phone call and you've been emailing them, you start phone calling them, they're going to stick with you. It's small,
Hmm.
but they appreciate the difference,
Hmm.
and they know, like, well, I like David. Why? He always picks up the phone. He just gives me a call. Why do I give you a call? Because I asked you how you want to be communicated
Right.
with, right? So you can embed the communication preferences into the workflow, because you will. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but you're going to hit something that you need to, reach out to the client
Hmm.
and get information from.
And I think that one of the things that you're really hitting on, whether it's being able to grow 2 or 3 times, or even dealing with clients, is it comes down to communication is key, because there's the human factor that we're dealing with, and that it's not that the workflow is right or wrong necessarily. It's that there's going to be bottlenecks somewhere. There's always going to be something that has room for improvement. So be able to figure out a way to be able to speak with your team, speak with your clients to remove those bottlenecks. And as a result of that, you're going to be able to improve the efficiency. So is that part of what you've seen as well, David?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you want to be very clear, and you want to standardize, ideally, how to signal these bottlenecks.
Hmm.
So for example, there should be a way to tag or flag or update or add a label or something visually where your team can communicate up to you in a standardized way. Because if it's standardized, then you can report on it, right? So what's waiting on a client, what's falling behind, what's at risk. Um, you want to have some mechanism that is standardized so you can pull these reports. I find that when firm owners cannot pull these reports, then you absolutely go into micromanagement. And also, you can't take a vacation. These 2 things happen, right? So it's like, if you
Hmm.
can't track properly,
Right.
you're going to be micromanaging. You're going to be tapping on the shoulder or digitally tapping on the shoulder, which is like, the Slack or Teams message. And every vacation is going to feel terrible because you're not going to know what's going on. You don't you lack visibility. So I am a fan of these weekly planning meetings. I'm a fan of these one-off meetings, but you also need a way to standardize the tracking, so you can pull up these reports and have a level of clarity to know what's going on in your book of business in your firm.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that having some standard process to identify the bottlenecks is something that allows your firm to know what to focus on, and then it gives you room for growth. So one of the things that I also feel is that, okay, workflow for so many firm owners, especially if they're going from solo to having their first team member, which is going to double their team,
Yeah,
literally,
yeah,
it is that workflow in the beginning can be overwhelming, because up until now, everything has been in their head. And they think that they have to have it all written down and perfect before they can even bring on a team member or
yeah.
get something moving forward. So what's your thoughts as to how to get started if this is something that just feels like you just don't have the time to create workflows. You see the benefits, but how do you get started?
So there's up until a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, there was this challenge in the industry where you had things in your head or multiple spreadsheets, and it was almost paralyzing, when told, well, take all that, put it in a cloud software environment, and run your business on that. And what made it paralyzing was, oh my gosh, we have to get our process perfect. We have to get our workflow perfect because a lot of these systems were not very forgiving. If in a year,
Mhm.
either through you're learning more about your market, you want to adjust your services, you're adding new team members, you're like, I want to adjust it. Like, whoa, it's hard, right? Like the long story short, it's very hard or it's very time consuming, or in some cases it could be expensive. You have to pay for it to be changed inside of the system. I don't know how far we want to dig into it, but for folks interested, we have this new version, which is the most adaptable, flexible piece of workflow technology in the market. And I was just talking with somebody last week, and he was saying, well, the first things I want to do is I want to organize everything. I want to get everything in a perfect place because once it's in there, I don't want to touch it. And I'm like, well, hey, good news. You know how you open up your calendar and you can change an event, and the event's like, do you want to change this for everything or just this? Well, that's how project management workflow should work. So as your system evolves, you're like, I forgot a step. I want to change the logic of it. I want to add a new team member. You can, and it can cascade down indefinitely into the future. And so my recommendation for folks listening, I know this is self-serving, but please reach out to me if that's you. You can just email me, David at jetpackworkflow.com. Happy to show you what we built. It's very new, right? So you might not have heard of it because it is very new. But what that allows people to do is instead of going into a conference room and on a whiteboard and writing everything out and then rearranging post-it notes and kind of getting to what you feel is the perfect process, well, instead of having that whiteboard, you could just put that in software. And then as you change the workflow, 3 months go by, you're using the tool and you're like, I can't believe it. We forgot this step, or we forgot this part of the checklist, or, we keep having this issue with this client. We need to update it. Great. Just update it. Just update it. It's like just walk out technology. It's like just update it. And so, the best thing is to just start doing it. And in the past, we recommended getting into a conference room, but now in April of 2024, so just open the tool. It's very forgiving. Add it in the system. If you need to change it, make a global change. You can have it cascade down whenever you want. So it's very easy to do that now.
And so this is what got us to this conversation anyway, David, was that with Jetpack Workflow, you're coming out with a new version. I know that you're still kind of in the planning stage right now, but is there anything else that you see that you really wanted to highlight that is going to be in the new version that's going to be a game changer for firm owners?
So, I mean, so what we kind of step one is we reinvented what we think is recurring deadline management from the ground up with some of the things I just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
You can make global changes to services and have it cascade down. You can make local changes to client services and have it cascade down. You can view work indefinitely in the future. It's a really nuanced, actually quite hard problem to solve, and this is why no other project management, workflow management software in the market really has this. So that's really step one. Now step two is what can we do to kind of utilize this framework to help you plan better? And how do we do this in a smart way? At the end of the day, we mentioned it earlier. It is hard because what's hard about this business is that it's a people business. It's a people business, and things are constantly
Mm-hmm.
changing. You have people, you have your team and your clients. I mean, it's people, 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 people. I know we talk a lot about process, but we can't ignore the people. And things change. Life is messy. And how does the system either adapt to that very quickly, or how does the system surface things that you should be adapting to that you may not be aware of yet? So we're really looking at and leaning into places where we can be a little bit more predictive of where bottlenecks are coming up. So there's a lot of work to be done, but if things around capacity planning, looking at risk, resonates with somebody listening, reach out to me, David at jetpackworkflow.com. We are pulling together a group of folks to kind of partner with as we build out the solution, kind of get early access, early designs, early feedback. So that if that's you and you're listening, I would love to hear from you.
I so appreciate that generous offer. And basically what I'm hearing is that the way that the Jetpack workflow system is going is that it allows for adaptation so that firms can evolve with as few of those growing pains and bottlenecks as possible.
Yeah, you can adjust. You can adjust without frustration. You can adjust with ease. You don't have to worry about, well, can the system scale with me? Well, what we desire to do, and I think what in large part we've done is we've built the most adaptable, flexible change management system in the market. So,
And actually, we got a comment from Gwen. She wanted to know if this was good for small business or a bit too robust of those who are doing their own bookkeeping.
so Gwen, I'm assuming you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments that is she running her own bookkeeping practice or is she
No,
a
she is
bookkeeper
not
for
a
other?
bookkeeper. She
Okay.
is a business owner, but she's doing her own bookkeeping.
Oh, I see. Okay, great. Yeah. Um, we've definitely worked with people. At the end of the day, our system's great where you have um projects, recurring projects, and typically clients for those. Now that client could be your own business. We've seen that a lot where you just add your client, internal. So I can add a client called Jetpack Workflow and we can manage our things internally. Or certainly as you have additional clients. So look, a lot of our customers are accounting firms that service hundreds or thousands of clients, but we've also worked with other folks that are outside of accounting and they just want to get better organized for themselves. So I would say if you're unsure, you can always check out our website, start a trial, or book a demo with us, and we'd love to talk to you. But if you're having pains right now of tracking things like bookkeeping work for yourself, or payroll schedules for yourself, or tax filing schedules, or quarterly tax filing schedules for yourself, I mean, these are all things we can typically help with.
Thank you for answering Gwen's question. And so the last thing that's coming up for me is, how do you know when is the right time to optimize workflow, looking at these automated solutions?
Yeah, there's two schools of thought, I suppose. I think there is the I will call it the proactive fortune teller folks, or I'll call it the forecasting. And so I think if you've successfully forecasted your growth as a firm, and we've seen that time and time again where we say, they have a predictable sales pipeline with a predictable conversion, predictable onboarding, predictable retention. You could probably map out, a kind of every 30 to 50% level of growth, your systems will break pretty significantly. And so you can get
Mhm.
ahead of it in that way. And that's kind of one, thought. And we have seen some firms do that, but I would say the other hand is where, I would say the majority line, I will say where there's smoke, there's fire. So when you're starting to feel the frustration, the thorn in the side, when you're starting to feel actual pain, and what do I mean by that? You almost are missing deadlines or things are slow to get done. So there's hard deadlines like, we didn't get the tax return done on time. We missed a payroll, or there's, kind of softer deadlines. We expected the books to be closed on the 10th. They're not getting closed until the 25th. What is going on? If you're starting to see these attributes, if you're starting to, feel frustration of team members keep coming to you with the same question or the same problem, it really should be documented in the system. But if you feel like you keep needing to repeat yourselves, or you need to keep putting out fires amongst your staff, all these things, again, where there's smoke, there's fire. If you're feeling this in any small way, I can almost guarantee it's going to start to feel really painful in the upcoming months if you don't start looking at it today. So if you're feeling any amount of pain around redundant staff questions, if you feel like you're hurting the cats, if you feel like you're about to miss deadlines, you've missed deadlines, I mean you need to start thinking about this today because unfortunately it will only get worse until you start putting a solution in place.
Okay, so some red flags that I'm hearing are that maybe as a firm owner, you're the bottleneck because everything revolves around you still. And so it's keeping people from being able to follow through with their own jobs. You're missing some deadlines or starting to get really close to deadlines, and it's creating more stress than it needs to. And also the possibility that things are slow to get done. If any of those things are happening, then it's probably an indicator that you need an automated solution or a workflow and
Yep,
stop being the bottleneck in your own firm's progress and growth.
absolutely. Well put.
Okay, David, you've made some great points today. What we focused on is avoiding workflow bottlenecks as firms grow, harnessing the power of AI to supercharge the workflows, and improving your firm's bottom line. So if somebody wanted to connect with you, I know you shared it before, but once again, if they want to connect with you or Jetpack Workflow, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, we have a lot of resources at jetpackworkflow.com. It's where you can book a demo. It's where you can start a trial. We also have a number of resources in the footer. So maybe you're thinking, hey, I'm not ready for software, but I'm always trying to pick up best practices. In the footer of that website, we have 32 spreadsheet templates to kickstart your journey into standardizing your workflow. We have a copy of our digital book of our book, Double Your Accounting Firm. So jetpackworkflow.com is really a great place to look at all of our resources. And please connect with me, follow me on LinkedIn. So I think we got reconnected there. We've been posting a lot there. So we do these podcast interviews, and we're constantly trying to surface best practices on LinkedIn. So if you haven't already, please give me a follow, or please reach out and say you heard me on Lauren's show.
Thank you so much, David, for the engaging conversation. I appreciate everybody that has joined us today and listened in. This is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solution, showing accounting firm owners how to double their income while working half the time.